Welcome back to our program. For those viewers who are just joining us, I'm Tony Noakes, and with me today is Dr. Wendy Walsh. Our topic on today's program will be of special interest to anyone who has suffered injury due to a medical product or medical device. This segment of our program is about opioid painkillers and the addiction problems that are now being called a national emergency. Wendy, what can you tell us about the use of opioids and problems related to their use?
Well, Tony, you're right. The abusive use of these painkillers has become a huge problem for our country. According to the Centers for Disease Control, overdose deaths involving prescription opioids have quadrupled since 1999 and now total over 183,000, with over 42,000 in 2016 alone. Opioid narcotics are drugs that bind to opioid receptors to block or reduce feelings of pain. They're often prescribed for patients who have just had surgery or experienced physical trauma, such as a car accident or serious sports injury. The most commonly prescribed opioids include oxycodone or oxycontin, hydrocodone, methadone, and fentanyl.
How addictive are these opioid drugs?
These drugs are super addictive. Opioid drugs are known to be as addictive as heroin, and when taken with alcohol or other drugs, they can easily cause an overdose.
Wendy, it sounds like this addiction affects a lot of people.
It does. It's tearing apart families around this country, Tony. It's estimated that in 2016 alone, over 2 million Americans abused or were dependent on prescription opioids, and thousands of people are treated in emergency departments for misusing prescription opioids every day. In fact, NBC News recently reported that the cost of Medicare alone in 2016 was over $4 billion. We're all paying for this.
That's staggering. But when it comes to who is responsible for these addictions and overdoses, aren't the patients who become addicted responsible for their addiction?
I want to make this clear. When you have a deep physical addiction, you are not in control. When complaints are filed by patients or their loved ones, the claim is that by prescribing and supplying these powerfully addicted drugs, they cause these plaintiffs to abuse the opioids, even if they engaged in criminal activity to obtain them. In many cases, plaintiffs lost jobs or wages as a result of their addictions, and others lost loved ones who overdosed on opioids and died. Addiction is an illness.
So victims of opioid abuse can in some cases file suit against the physician and pharmacies who prescribe them, right?
They certainly can, although there's no exact precedent for these opioid lawsuits that doesn't make them any less legitimate. You see, a defense attorney recently challenged a lawsuit against his client, asking the West Virginia Supreme Court if plaintiffs who admittedly had engaged in criminal behavior to obtain and use drugs still had the right to sue. The court upheld the lawsuit, with the Chief Justice writing in the majority opinion that the court found our system of comparative negligence offers the most legally sound and well-reasoned approach, don't you like my legalese there, to dealing with plaintiffs who have engaged in moral or illegal conduct. In other words, you can still sue. It's not your fault.
Okay. What type of damages can be claimed from these lawsuits?
Well, in lawsuits that allege prescriptions are being written without using the, quote, utmost care and discretion by healthcare professionals and doctors, damages can include medical expenses, including money, often thousands of dollars spent on the prescription drugs themselves, costs for drug treatment programs, low wages, you can't get a good job if you're an addict, right? Pain and suffering, and I'm sorry to say, funeral expenses if someone lost a loved one due to an overdose, and any other relief that the court finds is just fair and just.
Wendy, who would be potentially eligible to claim damages in an opioid lawsuit?
Basically, anyone who has become addicted to prescription opioids may be eligible for a lawsuit against physicians, pharmacists, and or drug wholesalers. But the only way to know for sure is to speak to an experienced attorney. They know this game and they can help you.
So have there been other significant lawsuits filed as a result of the opioid problem?
There have. In a recent case, the state of Ohio sued 5 pharmaceutical manufacturers in May of this year, arguing the companies fraudulently marketed addictive prescription painkillers, seeking hundreds of millions of dollars to address Ohio's opioid crisis. And Ohio led the nation in overdose deaths in 2014, and with a reported 3,050 deaths just in 2015. Now, early 2016 totals from some counties indicate the death toll climbed another 30% in 2016. Ohio's Attorney General said the drug manufacturers knowingly misled physicians and patients into thinking Oxycontin, Percocet, and other opioids were non-addictive and safe in larger quantities. He stated they knew all of it was wrong and they did it anyway, unleashing a healthcare crisis that has unfurled far-reaching financial, social, and deadly consequences for the people and families of the state of Ohio.
Obviously, tough charges from a state that has been seriously impacted by opioid abuse. You know, those are some serious allegations. I can see why lawsuits are being filed by patients as well as the states that have been affected by opioid addiction. So if you or a loved one has suffered as a result of an opioid addiction, you need to call the number on your screen right now because you may be entitled to significant compensation for your injuries.